Hello.
Morning, everybody.
Okay, so hello and welcome everybody. My name is Antoinette Jordan. I'm from the HECAT project at the Southeast Technological University in Ireland. Thank you very much for joining us this morning for the launch of these 3 policy briefs. They emerge from 3 EU Horizon 2020 projects. Those projects are the ETAPAS project, which looks at ethical technology adoption in public administration services. The TechEthos project, which looks at technologies with high socioeconomic impact, and the HECAT project, which looks at disruptive technologies supporting labour market decision-making. They're all funded under the EU Horizon 2020 programme, part of a family of projects that look at emergent and disruptive technologies by public administrations and society. And we are also joined today by representatives from 2 other projects, the Impulse project, which looks at identity management in public services, and the NLab 4 CIT project, which looks at it's a network of laboratories for civic technology co-production. So thank you all for being here today. These projects have been working away doing pathfinding research over the past 3 years and are now able to make an overall contribution to our understanding of how technology, in particular AI in today's talks, remake public services, our economy and society, and how we can attend to the responsible ethical use of these technologies through AI trust, values and accuracy. So these impactful talks should take 1 hour and include time for questions at the end. We expect to stick to time and we look forward to your engagement. So now let me hand over to my colleagues from the HECAT project, Dr. Ray Griffin and Dr. Orla Hayes, to present the first policy.
Muted as usual. Good morning all, or as we say in Ireland, Táfáil Tirove. You're all very welcome to the launch of these policies today and the launch of HECAT's policy on algorithm profiling in public employment services. Our report is about a technology that has now been in use in some member states for over 25 years, and that's algorithm profiling. It is a little known fact that in 1/3 of all OECD countries, that are mostly EU member states, if you sign on for public employment services or public employment benefit, an algorithm will decide or at least support a decision about what actually happens to you. In this, a model that's either a supervised mathematical model or, as currently being envisioned, an unsupervised artificial intelligence model will predict if you're likely to be long-term unemployed. And the definition of long-term unemployed is normally unemployed over 1 year period. These modelings are then used to determine the level of unemployment interventions and supports that are given to you. Unemployment interventions and supports represent about 0.6% of GDP in most EU member states, and so represent a massive social investment in cohesion, poverty alleviation, and indeed support a vibrant economy and society. The promise of these technologies is to determine or ration this investment, primarily in the form of expensive public employment service casework and training interventions to support those who are most likely to struggle in finding work. As a result, they promise to make the working of public employment services more efficient and effective. However, despite 25 years of experience of such algorithms and such technologies being used in public employment services, there's no single dominant design for these algorithmic profilings. And as we will see, there's a significant issue in making these technologies work, issues that the user themselves are not fully aware of. Hence, our call within this policy is for a brief and reporting standard that is open and transparent. So the HECAT project set out to develop an ethical algorithm-based platform to assist public employment services and unemployed people in making informed, transparent, and integrated decisions themselves. Our work is sociologically led, so it uses beyond cutting-edge technologies and approaches to data analysts on both national and registry data sets, including using novel artificial intelligence hybridically with explainable statistical modeling methods. So our work is co-created with ESS, which is the Employment Service of Slovenia, expert panels of policymakers, caseworkers who work in public employment services themselves, and the unemployed citizen who's at the heart of that kind of world. This report emerges from our benchmark review of state-of-the-art profiling algorithms used in PES, which are the public employment services, including AI methods.
So, thanks, Orla. So forgive the impenetrable detail of this table, but here's our review of 25 years of experience of these profiling algorithms that suggests this unsettled technology. And our approach here is to embed the transformation into AI as an extension of existing approaches. In this work, we trace the multiple deployments using a systematic literature review, supplemented with briefings directly with policymakers and technical people who develop these algorithms, as well as our technical partners who patiently explained the complex mathematical voodoo to us social scientists until we eventually understood the underlying processes in these techniques. Reported accuracy on the table in red, problematic on a number of fronts, fall within the 50 to 95% range, with most production environment algorithms operating at around the 70% rate of accuracy. All technologies have their accidents. For the invention of the ship is also the invention of the shipwreck. And the sooner that we understand and theorize the nature of these accidents for these specific technologies, the less harm they will do. So our review shows that accuracy needs to be decomposed into false positive and negatives, and are highly sensitive if thresholds or constraints are imposed on the working of the model. In our case, caseworker capacity in public unemployment services often intervenes to recast the best threshold into an optimal threshold, and that has huge impacts on the accuracy of the algorithms. Our benchmark exercises in using AI, neural networks, deep learning approaches on Slovenian registry data, as well as a range of other methods as we sought out a best practice approach, including Probit, Logit, random forest neural network, indicate that accuracy is not particularly enhanced and moving outside of logistical regression, Logit models that are explainable with identifiable variables and weightings and can be distinguished by users. So what our work reveals is that the technology is poorly understood by users. Most technologies are, like, I don't particularly know how my car works. It's an input-output situation where you, once it gives you an answer, you tend to take that at face value. And it required us to invest a huge amount of time to understand the specifics of these important public service algorithms. So while I think society in general has a much enhanced view and is much more sensitive to the issue of accessing people's data, there's not the equal concern or attention into how data is transformed and processed in ways that are political and policy in their nature. And there are really important cases of similar technologies coming under political and policy scrutiny with significant implications for politicians and policymakers. I think most people are aware of the Dutch tax authority scandals, but in our use case, there's a significant legacy of abandoned or contentious technology deployments. You know, particularly draw people's attention to the Swedish and the Austrian cases, but you know, most cases have some level of disquiet about their operation. So largely hidden is that these algorithms, even when they work properly, echo the bias and prejudices of the labour market. We know the labour market is a place of bias in which people are picked for work and are paid in discriminatory ways. And when we model that accurately in our welfare system, that accelerates the bias in the system that is actually supposed to be the counterbalance. given the superficial and ad hoc reporting of bias, it's very hard for users to determine how much to rely on the outcome of an algorithmic decision. But most deployments have a human override, but in the absence of that deep understanding by users of the limitations of the technology and biases, they may and are very much likely to either ignore the technology or over-rely on it, but not use it in a kind of sophisticated, nuanced way in which they understand it. With this policy brief, we aspire to contribute to current debates over regulating AI. The current debate is obviously led by the rapid adoption by users of these large language models, which I think we all are well aware of, ChatGPT and Bard and the rest of them. But bringing our understanding of how novel AI and algorithmic technologies have changed the long-term social and organizational processes in sensitive areas such as public policy can offer a real insight into how standards might be shaped. And of course, once Pandora's box is opened, we need to understand, control, and protect against the harms of fire. So, Orla?
So in practical terms, user literacy and sensitivity to the accuracies of these technologies and these models need to be improved by labeling. And we recommend using a robust, intuitive, and simple format. This labeling should address the major things a person needs to know so that they can calibrate their reliance on a technology. These are around elements like the design and the deployment, the accuracy and transparency of these models or these technologies, the bias and risk mitigation, the processes involved, and even down to the data that is being used. I'll pass you back.
Yeah, so in our case, this is kind of what we feel needs to be made available to users. You know, if you buy a dishwasher, there's a sticker on it that gives you a strong understanding of its environmental impact. And similarly, if you're a subject to an algorithm like this, we feel that it should be disclosed to you exactly how it's working. So in our use case, this is what we feel is needed for citizens to remain to sustain faith in technology. So in terms of inputs, the following needs to be known by users. They need a list of variables and their weighting in models. And of course, in AI, that's black boxed. We need to know the parameters for the training data. I know most people, for example, will know that ChatGPT is locked from 2020 backwards, and so knows nothing of 21 and 2022. And we also need to know the parameters for updating and retraining various models, how often that happens, and on what data it draws on. And specific to our use case, we need to know the imposed capacity constraints. Now, that has a broader application. So, for example, we know in AI systems, often the designers intervene to put rules in place to stop issues of racism, sexism, or self-harm. And they should be made public to users so they know which bit is unsupervised, and then if there's any supervisory overrides put in place. In terms of outrun, we feel that the parameters for accuracy really need to be known. So is the accuracy from bench exercises where it's trialed on training data? Is it a forecast accuracy, or is there in-field post hoc evaluations of the actual outrun of accuracy? And we also feel that false positives and false negatives need to be disaggregated in accuracy reporting, and that putting them together means the accuracy reported is actually of no use to somebody who's trying to understand the model. So to summarize, AI and algorithmic modeling is here. It's been here for a long time. It does need regulation because current practice is opening up more questions, and those questions will ultimately raise questions over whether we should continue with these technologies, as in the case of abandoned systems. So we propose a reporting standard that, when used, shows exactly what can be explained and what can be unexplained, and so can distinguish between supervised and unsupervised modeling. And it can make us bring users' attention to the issue of how much to rely and how much to use in an advisory mode guidance that comes from AI assistants. So we've showcased this in a way that it could be done to preserve the potential and the ambition and the use of these technologies by offering a minimum standard for reporting to users that allows them to determine and calibrate their appropriate reliance on these powerful techniques. So that's our policy brief. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll just invite any response in relation to that, or maybe we'll take Q&A at the end of our talk. Okay, so so I know the other talks will have formal responses, and we'll so they'll have that built into their talk. So I'll also invite your questions into the chat, and they'll be moderated at the end of the talk, or we might answer them as we go. So just to draw your attention that we're really, as you can see, we're very passionate about our use case, but we feel there's a broader context for our policy brief. So you can follow, there's our socials contact, Orla and my email address, if anybody wants to reach out and raise any questions with us about it. Very happy to talk about it. All of our materials are available on our website, HECAT, and the tool that we've built for use in public employment services, the My Labour Market tool, is there as well if anybody wants to play around with it. So with that, I'd like to hand you over to Sarah Mancini, a Senior Manager in Labour. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. So thank you, and thank you for having us and our project ETAPAS at this venue. Our project, as already introduced, is meant to provide to public sector organization tools, methodologies, and also a technology platform for using disruptive technologies and also AI in a trustworthy way. So making aware of the public sector organization of all the legal, ethical, and regulatory requirements to use it in a responsible way. Our project also engages with the public sector organization because we have 4 use cases in order to really tailor our approach to their needs, and also testing it with real cases. In the end, we provide a framework that we will show today in comparison to the ALTAI assessment, which is a tool provided by the high-level expert group on AI that was funded and sponsored by the Commission to provide another tool for ethical assessment of AI solutions. What we did in our policy brief was to analyze the 2 approaches and compare them, understanding exactly what are the characteristics, what are the common characteristics, but also the differences, and then leveraging on the experience of using these different tools to provide some recommendation to policymakers. So starting from our project, the framework that we developed is composed of 4 main components. So we have a code of conduct with 10 ethical principles that were based on both research and also validation with the public sector organization to really tailor them for the sector. So we have 10 principles for maybe more technologies, so not just AI, but specific for the sector. Then, based on that, we developed a risk framework that has 8 risk categories and 34 risks that, again, is trying to provide a taxonomy for assessing all the risks that technologies and AI pose when using those technologies in the public sector. And then built on that, we developed our responsible disruptive technology indicators. That is, let's say, the main point of this analysis. Together with this, we also have the analysis of the European legal framework to help also in the analysis and understanding of the legal requirements of disruptive technologies in the public sector. So our framework, again, is built on top of the risk categorization that we developed, and then provides the indicators. Those are of two types. We have the assessment indicators that are fact-based questions. Those are also split into different types. The risk indicator, which assess if the risk is relevant or not for the specific use case. And then based on that, we also show mitigation indicators to help drive in the mitigation of the risks. This is dynamic and is based also on the phase in which the solution is in the moment. So for example, if you are in the design phase, some questions will be shown and some others will not. And the same applies for the during the development phase or after the development phase. So this is a dynamic assessment to help the public sector organization in assessing the risks and identify mitigation questions, and also monitor how these two aspects of the solution are evolving over time. We also combine this with computational indicators that are semi-automatically indicators that are computed through the platform based on the actual data and logs from the AI solutions or the other disruptive technology solutions that are deployed. These are very context specific and are really tailored to the content and the technology and the application that we are analyzing. We also combine this with a validation process, which helps the public sector organization to really understand what are the real issues, ethical and legal, for the use case that they are adopting. This is the overall process. I will not go through all of it, but it's important because this shows that our approach is not just a self-assessment platform, but it's also combined with engagement methodologies that really help to contextualize the approach to the specific context. What is instead the assessment list for trustworthy artificial intelligence, which is called ALTAI? This is also a web tool for self-assessment specific for artificial intelligence, and it is based on the key requirements of the high-level expert group that you see on the left. For each of them, the web tool is providing a structured questionnaire trying to help guide whoever is compiling this questionnaire through the risks and also the actions that can be put in place for mitigating these risks. This also provides some overall score, and it's also something that you can download and have it for a future comparison with new assessment. So what we did was to analyze both the literature review on this tool, but also to ask to the user of this tool what were their opinion or their experience with this tool. And what we got was that it is something general, so you can use it across the whole life cycle of the AI solution, but it's not adapting to the stages of the life cycle. It is general enough to be applied in different sectors, so with respect to our approach, this is not sector specific. It is not easy to reply to all the questions, but it's not also mandatory. So it's just a tool that supports with the analysis of this kind of ethical requirements. So what is the comparison between these tools? They are both useful tools for understanding what are the real risks or the ethical implication of AI. Let's focus on AI now, and help in identifying actions that can be put in place to mitigate this risk. They are both reliable and trustable because they come from ALTAI, from the high-level expert group, which are really European experts, but also ETAPAS has been built on top of ALTAI, and also with the real engagement of not just experts, but also the public sector organization that will use it. They both provide the guidelines, which somehow they are not very straightforward to be adopted. And they are also considering ethical principles, considering also social environment, accountability, and so on. So they are really solid with their assessment. They are both being applied from the design phase until on, but this is a difference between the two because again, ETAPAS is trying to modulate the questions to the specific design phase, while ALTAI is a fixed, let's say, questionnaire, and they can also provide the comparability of the results over time. Here, a difference is that ETAPAS is also in a closed environment. So if you have the tool, you can actually navigate through the dashboards and compare, like in an analytic way, the results, while ALTAI is more open. It's on the web, really open to everybody, but you cannot have, let's say, your own personalized experience. What is also the difference that are, let's say, more strong? The ETAPAS framework is really specific for the public sector organization, while ALTAI is not. This is a key point because also with the other projects that we engaged when consulting about the use of ALTAI, many of them were saying that the recommendations should be really tailored to the specific sector. For example, the legal sector is very different from the educational sector, or for the energy and utilities is very different from the financial sector. So they were stressing the fact that they should be tailored to the specific context of application. The difference is also that ALTAI is specific for the AI applications, while ETAPAS is considering more disruptive technologies with the pros and cons that follow. They are also providing the scoring systems, but ETAPAS is a bit more structured because it assesses both a risk score and a mitigation scores, and they are compared. So if you are not, if you are very risky, you need to ensure a high level of mitigation score to be, let's say, compliant with the with what we say it's ethical, while ALTAI is a more simple approach. They are very comprehensive, both of them, so they are not very fast to be completed, and they require the involvement of different stakeholders because you need different competencies to really understand the different requirements or suggestions, and this also provides for a bit more time to complete it. For example, for ALTAI, the consultation we carried out we're suggesting that this is going to be complicated for SMEs, so small and medium enterprises that probably do not have so much expertise and so on. Then ETAPAS is providing also the methodology for using the assessment, while ALTAI is an open tool on the website that is left for independent use. And again, the monitoring of the results is a different approach, because ETAPAS, again, can be tailored to the specificity or needs of the user. So, but both of them are really, really interesting tools, and we will need more of these tools to ensure that the disruptive technologies and AI are used in line with what is the European approach to technology that puts people rights at the center, and also the needs of the people at the center of the use of technology. So from both of these approaches, we got some policy recommendation. The first of all, that this need is clear, that we need to have these approaches and that we need to build competencies around it. And these approaches should be tailored to specific sectors, because the sectors, thinking about ethical requirements, present different ethical issues, and the risk connected to that are different. So we need to bear in mind that we need to understand the specific context of application. Another point is to have the legal and ethical assessment throughout the whole life cycle, but starting from the beginning, because as soon as you start to have an idea, you need to understand what are the risks. And if you do it from the beginning, you have the time to realize what can be the mitigation actions, or what is the technology that you need, what is and you can integrate those actions within the technology itself from the beginning. Then you need to ensure reliable results based on the principles and the practical activities. One key point here is that you need also to engage with the final users of your applications, because they are the ones that are in the end impacted by it, and you need to let them know and also understand the needs. And this is something related also to the next policy recommendation, that is important to have the different stakeholders and competencies at the table, because these are really heterogeneous and multidisciplinary topics, and you need a different set of competencies. So from the more ethical, to understand the context, the implications, and so on, but also the technology side, because you need to understand how you can integrate, what is the real, let's say, concrete action that you can do. And then you need to monitor the results and the risk over time to understand if there are new and emerging risks, if you are doing everything you can to mitigate those risks, and also put in place corrective actions. So this is based on both our direct interaction with the public sector organization and also with the consultation of very different projects working in this field. So open for any question there is, and please, if you want to know more about the project, about the tools, and about the approach that we are developing, please visit our website, and also if you want, send us an email. I see a question. I think there is time. I don't know. Yeah, Geraldine.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Geraldine Canny here from LCTU. Thank you so much for this very interesting presentation. I wonder if you could explain how both ETAPAS and HECAT are considering how to make artificial intelligence safe, and what you feel is the implications of over or under regulation of this exciting space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I go first, and then I will leave my colleagues for the rest. As mentioned, our project is really about that. So we are really developing the approaches, so like a methodological approach, but also the technology tool to support this approach. And this is composed by the principles. Also the assessment is to drive the public sector organization through this topic, and we are really helping them to do it. So this is like the main objective. What we are understanding is that this is not very easy. So the very first thing is to build the understanding into the public sector organizations, to let them understand why it is needed first, and then also to do it, because it's not easy and the competencies are really multidisciplinaries. So this is what we are doing. About the overregulation or under-regulation, from my point of view, I think regulation is needed, because we are seeing that the risk is high and we need to do something. I think that the approach that the Commission took in Europe, it's very valid. The risk is there to maybe over-regulate, or maybe define too much or too many applications as high risk. There is, but I think that the approach that the Commission is taking is a good one.
Yeah, and maybe to reply from the HECAT side, and thanks for the question, Geraldine. Yeah, it's a great question, because it is the ultimate question in regulation. How do we preserve the potency and excitement of this technology and the great things that it can do? But then also we know how harmful it can be. And I think that's what legislators are really grappling with. In our project, I think what is really useful is that we incorporate AI as just the next phase of algorithmic investigation. And it's an extension of existing technologies rather than the radical break. And then when you can look at the issues that arise with the existing technologies, and then you think through how AI is going to change that slightly, it's quite obvious how regulation should unfold in a very positive way that is sympathetic to innovation and development and maximizes the potential of the new technology, while also keeping people safe. So,
Great, thank you.
do we have a respondent for that talk?
Yes, we have Professor Guido Buola from the NLab for CIT project has prepared some comments.
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for the invitation and compliment for the project. What I find more interesting is the risk management approach. The idea not just to have a questionnaire about if principles are respected or not, but entering in the details of which are the risks and how they are monitored and dealt with. And also the other strong point is the fact that it is explicitly connected, the methodology, with an engagement process with all relevant stakeholders. And I think that the importance of the problem of assessing, dealing with the AI systems, in particular in the public administration sector, is worth the effort. So even if the questionnaire, the website for assessment is heavier than ALTAI, it is justified to devote more time for this kind of system. Not just AI system, as you correctly say, but all kinds of disruptive technologies, because they probably bring similar issues for citizens, for public administration. So, another point, maybe a suggestion is to maybe ease this effort needed for the assessment is that maybe one could connect the risk analysis with a conditional subsequent workflow. So if you identify that some risks are relevant, maybe you go on with some deeper questions, while if other risks are less relevant, maybe you can lighten the subsequent analysis and also the degree of engagement by the different stakeholders. Finally, but it is a warning, but is a general one, not concerning your project. Trust, trustability, trustworthy, sometimes as a term itself brings some presuppositions that are sometimes forgotten. To trust something, or maybe trust is a relationship among humans. It is not a neutral operation to translate the term towards a relation with a machine, because you are implicitly attributing to the machine properties which are typical to humans. You are making an intentional stance, to use the terms of the philosopher Daniel Dennett, attributing intentions, motivations, beliefs, even emotions. These risks to contribute to the overall movement in this moment, particularly in this moment of attributing ChatGPT and similar systems and general AI systems with more than they have. I know that the trustworthy term is promoted by the European Union itself in its work on AI, but still maybe some warning should be used. Compliments again.
All right, thank you for your comment.
Actually, we are evaluating the risk and then assessing the mitigation based on the answers. So it's a very good suggestion that we already are implementing, but it's still something that the public sector organization feel like it's too much, right, in general, but it's a good point.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you. So I think we'll move to our third policy launch now. Dr. Laurenas Adomaitis will present from the TechEthos project.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for the excellent presentation so far. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. So I will be talking about a policy note we published on behalf of TechEthos, and it has focused on extended reality and general purpose AI, generative AI. These terms keep changing, but I think you understand what we're talking about. One of the emergent technologies that has concerned us in the project was a kind of a combination of means to produce a human image and the means of producing human language, or at least imitating human face and imitating human language. So here we see 4 examples that are illustrative of this application. And all of them share one trait, is that they can have significant effects on the real material world. So we know that a deep fake of Vladimir Zelensky was made for political reasons to influence even military operations. On the bottom left, we have a replica software, which is a romantic companionship chatbot, which can definitely have real psychological effects on people. On the top right, we have Lil Michaela, who is an Instagram influencer with over 3 million followers, who has social media influence. However, she does not exist as a person. She's an artificial avatar. Also, we have Mark Zuckerberg in his own metaverse as an avatar. Obviously, a very influential person, a CEO of one of the largest companies in the world. So all of them can produce significant real effects, and we want to analyze them in terms of ethics. So how have we done this in TechEthos? In the ethical analysis, we have used 3 approaches. One was based on techniques and devices, concrete material production, products, and how they work. So one source of analysis. Another source of analysis was how they were applied in different application fields, in labor, in education, in medicine. So how they work in different fields. Lastly, we also considered real philosophical work. So we looked at core ethical dilemmas in these fields, in autonomy, in free will, these types of areas that do not have a definite answer. However, they can lead to significant ethical questions that need to be addressed practically. So based on all these 3 sources of analysis, we have formulated values and principles for each technology. This was not the only technology family, but it was one of them. And this is usually where an analysis would end. But we said, no, this is not enough. High-level values and principles are not enough. Why? Well, because when they're getting implemented, the developers, the policy people, nobody really knows how to apply them. When we say we need more transparency, well, in what way do we protect transparency with these applications? How do we apply them? So we think, and this is what we argue in the policy note, we need to move from values and principles, which is a good start, to norms and standards, something very practical, which will tell us how to apply them. So I have selected a number of values and principles to present. However, there are more in the policy note than in our analysis. So let's look at transparency, non-manipulation, dignity, responsibility, and environmental issues. Transparency, I'm sorry, I'm going to move the image so I can see it myself. Transparency in this area largely concerns whether it is disclosed to the users, to people, if they're interacting with a real object or a virtual object. And this is extremely important in areas where, like augmented reality, for example, where material and virtual objects are presented side by side. Or, for example, when interacting with a customer service, you might 1 second be speaking with a chatbot, and another second, a real human joins the conversation and takes over. So when are you communicating with the machine and when you're communicating with a person? This needs to be communicated clearly and in plain language, and people should be aware about the nature of objects. This information needs to be presented at key moments. So at the beginning of a conversation, at the beginning of the service, also perhaps at intervals that are set, or when the nature changes, for example, a person enters the conversation. In addition to that, transparency, as you might know, can be looked at 2 ways. One is whether the information is presented at all or disclosed at all. Another conception of transparency is to check whether the end user understands this information. Because if it is presented but it is not understood, it is kind of meaningless, which has happened with a lot of consent issues in modern practices. So you just click on consent and you don't even bother reading because it's so incomprehensible. So to avoid that, we suggest that there should be a norm that determines the user's subjective understanding of the information. And when a user is confronted with that, they should have an immediate option to just terminate service if they decide to. There should be very clear logout or opt-out options presented to the users. This leads us nicely into non-manipulation or autonomy issues, in which we discuss unsupervised systems. And these usually are transformer-based technologies like the chatbots, ChatGPT, and so on. Because we know that without any specific training or human input, these systems can develop Machiavellian ends justify the means strategies. So, for example, they can learn that the easiest way to achieve their goals is to lie, or to manipulate, or to not tell or not disclose the whole truth. So these strategies do happen. And we see two variables here. Of course, a lot depends on what the ends are, what the goals are. So if the goals benefit the manufacturer, the developer, the owner of such chatbot, it should be prohibited. If there are manipulative strategies to benefit not the user, but the owner, it should be prohibited. However, certain nudging techniques exist, and they're quite accepted in public policy and politics if they benefit the users, not the company or the owners. So if they benefit the users, there should be a case-by-case evaluation, and it's very difficult to give these risk versus benefit analysis without knowing what the benefits are. So we really leave it up to the context. However, there should be a distinction made between the benefit which goes to the manufacturer and the benefit that goes to the user. Of course, other systems might be designed specifically to deceive and to manipulate. And this can happen with fake social media accounts that produce a lot of content, for example, for political gain or political manipulation. Also, all kinds of targeted ad services, targeted PR campaigns that are also based on transformer chatbots, for example. So what do we do if they are designed to deceive? Well, if they're designed to deceive, it's universally bad, ethically unacceptable. But how do we tackle this issue? Well, we tackle this, as we argue, by implementing watermarks. Watermarks should be implemented in generative AI outputs, both linguistic or textual, and image or visual. And the fact is, usually they are already implemented. So we know that OpenAI and other companies, probably, they're not disclosing that, but they probably already implement watermarks. However, they keep the watermark detection proprietary. So they use it to detect their own output, and they protect this detection as part of their intellectual property. In other words, they have it, but we cannot use it. It's inaccessible to users. And this is a big problem. We think that functional watermarks that would tackle this type of deception needs to be accessible to human users. Also, when we combine transformer chatbots or other generative AI for text with a visual representation, and that representation resembles a living person, or even they claim that it is that person, like in this case, a digital Einstein. To us, it raises a lot of concerns about the dignity and memory of the individual. Like in this case, you can go on a platform and chat with Einstein, but of course, the chatbot is very trivial and it resembles nothing of what Einstein would be. So it is just a misrepresentation, a lie, basically. And we think certain applications like these that imitate or impersonate deceased or living individuals is or can be an infringement of that person's dignity. And human dignity is not alienable. So even if the person dies, they retain dignity. So we think there needs to be informed consent in this place. Unless a person consents specifically to this application, it should not be applied. And of course, Einstein could not consent to this application because it did not exist. And in general, we believe human subjects should have a say in what happens to their data posthumously or after their death. And this topic is currently not covered and not discussed in the GDPR because GDPR does not apply to people after their death because they cease to be a person, therefore they're not a personal data subject. This is the legal argument, and we think it is insufficient for these types of applications. Responsibility is a very important topic in social types of environments like the Facebook metaverse, because virtual actions can have real effects, and real effects lead to ethical responsibility. So whatever you do online can lead to psychological damage, to manipulation. People might do something in the real world as an effect of the virtual interaction. Therefore, it requires responsibility. And there are two options that can be implemented in a metaverse. One we call a serious metaverse, where identification is required to log in. So we know exactly who's behind each avatar and which avatar is human and which avatar is not human. In that case, we can apply material sanction for virtual action. This is the serious metaverse. However, there is an alternative, a ludic or fun or play-like metaverse, where you can be anonymous and you can hide behind an avatar, and where you don't really know if you're talking with the person behind it or it is another transformer chatbot. In this case, all you can do is apply virtual sanctions. You can ban an account, you can maybe put them in some kind of virtual prison, take away their items, but of course, real world consequences are unlikely or even impossible. So it is a choice, and we do not, I think it depends on what the universe does. If it is used for work or serious applications, then the first option might be more fit. A ludic metaverse is more play-like, more game-like, which is also a reasonable implementation. Responsibility for digital subjects should be shared between the developer, the trainer, the user, and the type. The exact way it should be shared will depend on context. I know I'm running a little bit out of time, but I'll try to make it. It's near the end. One very important topic that I cannot skip is the environment. And the worry here is that even now, around half of the internet traffic is not human-like. Not more, but around half of internet traffic is generated by bots, scrapers, web analytics tools, and so on. Some of them are even malicious. So the worry is that the same proportion might be transferred to large language model queries. We know that search engines are even now connected with web search. However, the CO2 cost for each language model query is at least 4 or 5 times higher than a search query. So people do not generate so much queries, but if they become automated and the bots begin to make these queries, the environmental cost can go high and exponentially. And this might have two solutions. There should be either edge computing, or there should be both edge computing implemented and inference costs should be minimized for the language models. And perhaps manufacturers should consider to only accept human-generated prompts, which is kind of an accepted strategy right now, but we should make sure that it stays that way. So these are parts of the policy note we have published. There is more. I really encourage you to look at the policy note that is online. There is also the full ethical analysis available, of course, for everyone of TechEthos. I really encourage you to look at that. And we have two recent papers with my colleague Alexei Greenbaum that tackle really emergent and very current topics in large language models. So I also encourage you to look at that, and thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're coming up to 1 hour. So if you need to leave, thank you very much for coming. And we look forward to engaging with you in the future. I think what we'll do, we have two respondents from the Impulse project, Dr. Francesca Morpurgo and Dr. Madeleine Schmid, who will talk about the TechEthos project with some prepared comments. And then Dr. Paweł Boskowski will give a brief comment on the HECAT project, and then we will open for questions, if that's okay with everybody. Thank you. So if you'd like to start, Francesca or Madeleine.
Hello to everyone. I'm Francesca Morpurgo from the Impulse project, and where I take care of the ethical aspects of the project. And I'm here with my colleague Madeleine Schmid, who takes care of the standardization aspects. So it's very strongly connected with something that has been touched by the policy paper presented now by TechEthos project. And I found, in fact, really interesting the position and the aspects presented. Of course, I mean, in Impulse, Impulse is a project that deals with digital identity. It means, the acronym means identity management in public services. So, in fact, within Impulse, artificial intelligence is not really much present. It's only used for onboarding, so we use biometric identification, and there is the place where artificial intelligence steps in. But reading your paper, I think that an aspect is really interesting also for us. And it is the one of responsibility, because of course it's a very difficult matter, and it's strongly related to what kind of digital identity you choose to use, what approach to digital identity, because it's widely known also in the literature that the approach you choose to adopt toward digital identity changes the balance between individual responsibility, individual rights. I mean, if they're more important than the rights of the individual or the rights of society to be able to track the actions of the individual, no? And so I suggest as a possibility that you also explore what kind of digital identity, and what, in some way you touched this topic during your presentation, and I think it's really relevant, because if you are able to identify, and so you use a strong digital identity system, one that allows you to identify the person while respecting, of course, the individual rights to privacy, that could be a possible solution to the issues you were naming. Of course, I mean, also the point about the shared responsibility, I think it's very interesting, but it's also a tricky one, because how do you establish where the responsibility, the accountability lies, whether on the individual, on the developer, or on the other actors of the process. And maybe this could be something that you could assess and examine also at the standardization level, it would be an option. So maybe here my colleague Madeline can step in. I leave the floor to her and have something to say about this. Thank you. Really interesting. I enjoyed your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. So yeah, I'm Madeline. I'm working for DIN, the German Institute for Standardization. And therefore, I would like to give you my view on your paper, more from a general point of view as a standardization body. And also for me, the topics you identified where standardization is needed, in your opinion, are really quite interesting. But they are also already addressed to some level already on international, European, or national standardization level, of course. So for me, it was also quite interesting to find that those needs you formulated in your paper are already those which are described in the German standardization roadmap AI, which was published as a second version in December 2022. So on this roadmap also several experts from Germany were working on. And for me, it was quite interesting to find that the needs are nearly the same as you identified. And of course, there are already standardization activities going on with regard to AI on national level, but most of those standardization activities are actually ongoing on international level and also on European level, of course, which is also for our European research and innovation projects always quite interesting. And so as you maybe also know, there are on both levels, on European and on international one, some technical committees which only care for artificial intelligence. So those technical committees are developing standards with regard to that. But the European Technical Committee is more or less there to adopt these international standards. So as you can see, most of the work is really going on international level. And on international level, there are already 17 standards published, which already also cover some of the addressed issues of your paper. And there are also 30 under development, which also cover to some extent some of those topics. And there's also one standard I would like to highlight because I don't know if you are aware of it. It's the ISO IEC TR 24368, which was published in 2022 and which is about artificial intelligence, overview of ethical and society concerns. And that could be also quite interesting for your project if you haven't had the chance to have a look at it. And also, I would really like also to recommend that your project, which really identified some interesting topics for standardization, would exchange with the according technical committees, maybe on international, but also on European levels, so that they are really aware of your project and also of what you identified as really important to bring this topic forward. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much for your comments. We just have a quick comment in the chat. Could you please write the number of the ISO in the chat? We didn't.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to invite Dr. Pavel Boskowski from the HECAT project just to give a few comments on the HECAT policy.
Morning, it's morning here where I am. So a lot of things have been said already today regarding the rollout of AI, in particular when AI is directly involved with people. I mean, the things that were ongoing with large language model and stuff like that, in the academia has reached the same level in the last 15 years. What OpenAI managed to do is to industrialize and to make the interaction with such systems more humane, which is an achievement on its own. And the biggest issue, what is now raised, is we are struggling with different things like explainability bias that is amplified through unsupervised learning and stuff like that. But at the end, as a lot of speakers today said, it boils down to trustworthiness. We are regularly using technologies, for example, flying, that not many of us understand it to a very detailed level, but we are still using it. In the end, everything will boil down to some sort of building distrust based on some sort of standardization or regularization. But it was said in the US Congress last week, these efforts should not in any way impede any development whatsoever. So there should be a clear, from a technical point of view at least, a clear threshold that what is an academic or a toy-based tool that pushes the boundaries, and where is the threshold that this tool becomes generally used. And since it is highly unlikely for a general public to be able to understand all the technical details, how the tool works, I think that having a body that standardizes its behavior, or to some extent checks the biggest pitfalls and makes it safe for general public use, will in essence increase the trustworthiness, and we should not be afraid of the tools. We should, because they will most certainly increase some quality of our life, but we should have some sort of trustworthiness that is currently lacking. And the fast onset or the fast adaptation of the tool, for example, the ChatGPT showed the actual unpreparedness of the society of using these things. So all the things that we've seen in HECAT and all the failed attempts in various public employment services was mainly due to technical unpreparedness to check to put guardrails on the tools and check all the possible errors or hallucinations, or whatever term would you like to use on these things. So such tools should be should go through some regulatory checks, but in the same time, these regulatory checks should not impede further development and testing, and so actually we should not put a limit on the sky. So that would be a really short thing, because from my side, a lot of things has been said today, really wonderful stuff.
Thank you, Pavel, and thank you for joining from your different time zone. So I think we'll invite Dr. Aisling Chute to just go through the questions that we've got in the chat and in the Q&A box.
Yeah, thanks, Antoinette. So we've just a few questions, I suppose, and just to wrap it up quite quickly. Loriana's had a question earlier on. So again, I don't know if you want to expand on it, but just to say what obligations, and it's to the HECAT project, what obligations, if any, would you see towards the data subjects, so the unemployed people, in addition to disclosing standards to employment agencies? So I think that's very important about, I suppose, how we're going to kind of make sure the standards are there, or how would they be rolled out maybe across different public employment services within Europe?
Yeah, and maybe just to add to that, I suppose it's something we've thought about a lot in our project. So you have caseworkers in frontline public servants who are using the technology every day and know it inside out. And you have the data subjects, the individual unemployed people who are subject to these algorithms. And obviously, you know, people working in the office are much more aware of how these technologies work. But nonetheless, in our project, we had the strong sensation that there's not that much difference between the technological literacy of street level, as we call them in our field, caseworkers, and the unemployed people they worked with. And the real challenge for us is how do you make it a very engaging, lightweight intervention that doesn't intervene with the technology, but gives the people the material they need to know. One of the things we also note is that designers are very wary about giving any information about how AI works to frontline users, because there's no standard for that. It's once you put some information out there, it just raises more questions, and they feel they can't defend, you know, the conspiracy querying and make people comfortable. So the challenge then is, if there is an actual reporting standard, everybody can work to that. And that gives tremendous confidence that disclosures are appropriate and people have the right information. But to answer the original question, we don't feel the information should be differentiated between people on the inside and on the outside.
And I suppose kind of somewhat linked then, there's another question from Zita just about from the ETAPAS and the HECAT project as well. But I suppose the general discussion is that we're both recommending kind of quality assurance. So looking at audits and reporting, maybe in reporting structures. I suppose we talk a lot about, you know, transparency and kind of taking things out of the black box in terms of the algorithm. But does it matter as well who's designing the technologies, what their biases are? And how they appear in the AI deployments as well. So how we can, I suppose, investigate that in terms of when we do kind of reporting and investigations into different AI. So does anybody have any comments on that?
I don't know. It's a difficult subject to tackle. I think in terms of, there are two main areas where it is concerning. One is political influence. So if AI is somehow making, I don't know how to even call that, making proclamation or some kind of arguments in the public sphere for a political reason, I think then it becomes suddenly very relevant. What is the origin of that agent and whose technology is behind it and how it is employed? So having transparency in that production chain would be useful for political reasons. Another reason that is very important is data protection. So we know that moving data around implies different liabilities. So of course, if you worked with European data, but you trained an algorithm, I don't know where, then you have the weights that are extracted from the data. So how do we treat that, and where it is stored might have different data regulation requirements. And in that case, it also becomes important where the data, where the model is, and how it is applied. But then, of course, the cloud is not a physical cloud that moves around, you know. We need to, it might be distributed, it might be in many places at the same time. So that's why I say it's complicated and I don't have a good solution to this question, but I think at least in two areas, the political influence and data protection, these issues are relevant and we should look into it.
Yeah, I suppose in our specific use case, I'm not a generalist, thank you, Zita, for the question. We feel that the main form of bias is passed through from the choice of training data. So AI is an ecosystem, it's an accelerant of the biases that it is trained on. So when the training data has only partial coverage of society, or it's exclusionary, or it's prejudices, like in our case, then expect your AI solutions to echo and accelerate those biases. The actual bias of the designers, I think, is a more subtle form of bias. And yes, it is important. I think there are genuine development approaches that people are working on to make AI more explainable. And disclosing who is developing it is a very important part of transparency.
Do you think there could be maybe then, as part of the standardization or as part of reporting and accuracy, is that there is this kind of almost a presentation of who's designed this, conflict of interest, different things like that, that actually makes that, because, you know, we know where a lot of the data comes from if we're getting it from the from the different central statistics offices across Europe or across the world, but actually who is designing it or who has done it, because there is going to be kind of public and private companies doing this as well, and we tend to just buy the systems. So even as some kind of reporting structure or standard for actually doing that, you know, I don't know if that's ever been considered.
Yeah, no, it's an open question, I think, and it's a good one. In our project, no, it hasn't been overly considered. So I think we're much more concerned about the biases that are in training data that people feel are unbiased, and then it's this hidden effect.
Okay, thanks. So I'll just say, call if anyone else has any questions, you can use the raise hand function or just jump in before the end.
I have one question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, a very nice conversation and very relevant conversation. I am from Norway. I belong to Norwegian University of Science and Technology. We are located in Trondheim, and I'm associate professor here, and I'm a math educator working in the education field. What is coming out in the last comments is how to prepare minds to meet with these technologies. And I think this preparation could start from the beginning to the end until you die, because AI is everywhere and it is influencing in that direction. So the question is how to create some kind of critical engagement with these tools as an embedded part of throughout developmental process, as a part of socialization, as a part of developing skills and knowledge and even disposition, so that we can continuously become aware of it. I think that is something that I feel that we need to somewhere bring some kind of embeddedness. And here I would encourage some kind of collaboration with the educational institutions as a worthy part of so that we should not work in isolation. I think that is something. And the second thing that I feel is might be very relevant for us is how to handle the idea of technical constraints that comes on the mind when user meet with these technologies. Because algorithms are, as we saw in the first presentation, there are many mathematical methods are used to filter, to sequence, and to many other things. What to do about these things? So can we claim that users do have a competence or capacities to critically engage with these structures? I think as a philosopher and mathematician, I really doubt. And if it is the case, what to do about the democratic action? Are we losing it? I think that is so I want some comments there. But thank you so much. I enjoyed completely a very nice conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sikander. So yeah, some really good points there. I think Lauren would like to come back in just to.
Yeah, I would like to react to this excellent question. I think I share your passion and vision for education. I teach AI ethics and data ethics in many engineering schools and business schools to future entrepreneurs and engineers. And I think it's valuable that they know about ethical design. But a more broad and perhaps even more important question is, what should the users know? That the end users, meaning everybody, all the people on Earth, what should they know about AI in order to be critical in their application? And in my mind, the most useful, the one area they could focus on is knowing the limitations, not necessarily how it works, because that's too difficult, I agree, but knowing the limitations of what the system can and cannot do. For example, a very important thing to understand is that the system is not responsible for what it says. To me, it is a greatly important topic that we should never try to assign responsibility, or as Guido has said, trust simply to the machine without knowing anything about the designer, the people behind it, and its biases and so on. So I think this type of information knowledge is very relevant, but how do we disseminate it widely is an open question, which I agree needs to be tackled.
Yeah, absolutely, Lawrence, thanks. And yeah, I mean, some really great comments there and really great discussions. And I think going forward, I know a lot of our projects, we do a lot of synergy work between everyone and discuss things. So, but we've kept people just a little bit over time, unfortunately. And we, you can contact any of the projects. I think people put up their information there as well for anyone, and the recording will be available as well to distribute. So I'll hand you back to Antoinette, maybe just for some closing comments. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Aisling, and thank you, everyone. I will just have a final closing comment from our colleague Giorgio Constantino, a project advisor at the European Commission, the Research Executive Agency, and his area of interest is the inclusive, innovative, and reflective societies. So Giorgio, thank you very much.
Thanks to you, and thanks everybody. I've been following this very compelling discussions that you had, and I want to thank for the initiative. I appreciate particularly the fact that these discussions happen across projects. Let's compare what our fundings are in this ever so crucial area of trustworthy artificial intelligence, how this development that is going to be disruptive in the society specifically affects public administrations and their relationship with citizens. So I just wanted to thank you, and I'm sure that this is the discussion doesn't end here. Some of the projects that intervened today are under my supervision. Besides that, HECAT also Impulse is in my portfolio. ETAPAS has been funded under the DT Digital Transformation 2. Although I'm not the project officer, I follow the project, and it's great work that is doing specifically on the ethical use of disruptive technologies on public administration. So I'm sure that this discussion continues, and I'm really happy to see you guys collaborating and discussing. And what I can recommend is that there is to make an effort to make the gist of what you discussed present to a policymaker in a digestible format. You have produced a very good policy brief that has been forwarded to policymakers. As you know, we have discussion ongoing with DG Employment because it's specific to this area. But yeah, I mean, if in the production of policy briefs or other kind of reports, white paper, call it as you want, there is the possibility to work cooperatively among you. This would be great, so that to make sure that the richness of this debate and the key messages are not lost and are delivered to the policymakers. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Giorgio. And I'd just like to thank everybody for their attention today. I'd like to thank our respondents and our projects, and I hope everybody has a lovely day. The details of policy briefs are available in the chat and on the 3 project websites. So thank you again, and goodbye.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone.